somebody 4 years ago about blind dogs, and I knew it did cost about £50,000 to train a dog. But unfortunately now it's gone up to £65,000 to train a dog for the blind over a period of time that got price, isn't it? That's 65,000 is it? So I think we've got a very interesting talk. And you're going to talk about the blind and the art dog. Blind dogs. I think it's
If I can move on. Thank you very much. I know that you can't see it, but my guide dog Mary is here and snoozing quite comfortably, so thank you for that. Now, thank you so much for your very, very warm welcome. My name is Fennymore, and I am the founder and the creator of the work for Blind Only Art. I'll come to that in a moment, because as an artist, I have managed somehow to bring blind and art together. And I'd like to take you on that journey that I've taken, so that you can see exactly how I've managed to achieve it. And I'm pleased to say some really wonderful reviews recently. Before I go on, I would love to tell you this, that whenever I'm invited to give a talk, a presentation, or indeed an after-dinner speech, the first thing I ask myself is, what do I have in common with these people? What about this group? And anything else I can actually bring together within the talk, so we're not talking at opposite ends of the table. Well, I am delighted to tell you that my youngest grandson, who will celebrate his 21st birthday on the 2nd of December, is not only a Rotarian, but he is also the youngest JP in the country. He was appointed on his 19th birthday, and he is a wonderful young man. So your wonderful motto of service above self rings regularly in our house, if you imagine. And it's something that we all very much live to and for. I say this because in addition to my artwork, I also write. And I have a second novel coming out in January. Don't worry, I won't plug. Daisy's growing in rid for it, but I'll come back to that. But also, I'm also, I don't know which way to do it in order. I know, I'll do it this way. I'm a volunteer with Deaf Blind UK. I'm a volunteer with Essex Sight. I also raise funds for the Royal Marines Association for those who are injured, needing support, or in their later years needing support. One of my pieces of art is already being endorsed by the Royal Marines, and it's a picture of poppies with their globe and laurel endorsed on the front of it. The other thing I do is I work out of Westminster, the cross-party project, which if they're discussing something like art in education, or if they're discussing social care or care in the community, I'm always invited to go along. So for me, I have found that having lost my vision, I'm still able to do the things I really enjoy, and that's sharing. Now, the artwork came about by accident, actually. I didn't look for it. It kind of came and hit me, and I had this compulsion to do this. But before I do that, I'll tell you a little bit about guide dogs. We've been discussing it around the table here. Most of us, I would agree, that guide dogs are the most recognisable dog, working dog in the country. We know about the hearing dogs and also the assistance dogs, but guide dogs, I think, will remain the most recognisable. I've had 3 guide dogs. My first guide dog was Nesta, and she was a little black Labrador, like a piece of black coal she was gorgeous. Sadly, she was retired early because she got so nervous about when we lived in London. And she was such a happy dog, but very, very nervous. So she was retired, and I had to wait for my second guide dog, Amber. Amber was a diva, a real diva. If you had to say to her, in a very sort of loud voice, but told how to give commands to our dog, her face would crumple like a wet paper bag, and she'd throw herself in the hall and almost beat herself up, like, I can't do it, I can't do it. It was quite funny. But the funniest thing with Amber, I will tell you, as an ambassador, because I do have a guide dog, you can't get away from people wanting to give your dog a hug or to discuss what they know about guide dogs. And you have to draw a balance between, you know, what time you have to spare, where you are, what you're doing, and the queue behind you. There's always a queue behind. And one day, I'm standing in the village post office, and the lady behind the counter was getting quite animated about guide dogs. And I'm thinking to myself, yes, I'm sure, lovely, looking at the watch, lovely. And in an effort to draw this very long conversation to a close, because the queue behind me was practically out the door, I said, you know what it is? I said, guide dogs really are only as good as their owners. There was this short pause, and then from behind me, there was this gale and wave of laughter. When I turned around, there she was, on the back, waggling her legs. So now I've completely lowered the tone. Does anybody want to leave? Right, I will tell you now, I'm sure that you are curious as to how I lost my sight. And this is where I get very saucy and say, how many people sitting next to their partner at the table was left and said, oh, she was blind? Well, I am. And I say that because, unfortunately or fortunately, I kind of make blind look easy. And I can tell you it isn't. And I think the folks around here will see that just how difficult it is to eat a meal in public when there are folks trying not to look at you. And two questions I'm frequently asked. One is, what is it like to be blind? And I have to say that it's very tiring, because by just doing simple things, if I wanted the glass from this table, I would have to find the table. So everything I do, I have to meter it and almost plan it before I've even lifted my hand. So being blind makes you so very, very tired. And you have to be so organised and have a darn good memory as well, I have to say. The other thing with being blind, of course, is, and I always laugh when I say this, every day is a surprise. Because no 2 days are the same. You might do the same walk, you might do the same visit, but everything might well be different. There may be something on the pavement, there'll be different people. So you have to be very flexible, and you have to truly adjust your day to where you are, what you're doing, and well, actually do things with a smile. And if when things do go belly up, instead of finding a corner and a blanket and say, I want to stay here, you just shrug your shoulders and say, okay, let's get on with it. And indeed I shall. Now, I will tell you how I lost my sight, and I'm sure your curiosity is overwhelming. I won't get into the gory bits, I promise you, just had lunch. So I will tell you that I was only 28, and I'd like to tell you that was 10 years ago. And I was 28 and I was told that I would have no sight by the time I was 40. And this came about because I've been through a dreadful first marriage, and it left me very anxious, and I was given antidepressants. And if anybody here has been on the antidepressant path recently, don't worry, because the drug I was given it was a psychotropic drug, and it's no longer available, so no worries there. What happened was that it actually reduced the blood flow to the back of my eye. So the back of the eye didn't work, it couldn't create any images to send to the brain. Always assuming there was one there to begin with. So I didn't realise just how poor this was until one day I said to my husband, has it gone misty? And he said, no, it's a lovely day. So I said, oh, okay. So rather than alarm him, I'll go and clean the windscreen, you know, just in case, you know, on the way home. So I then went to our GP, who in turn, I did the whole rounds. And this is where I ended up with Margaret Thatcher's surgeon. How about that? And Professor Shilling was his name. And whenever I went to see him, he would say to me, so what madness and mayhem have you caused since I saw you last? Because he knew I wasn't a woman to sit down in the corner and wait for life to come to me. It was agreed that any more procedures would be wasteful on both sides. So he said, I want you now, he said, to consider being registered blind, which indeed I was. But the irony of this is that when you hear blind people say they have residual vision, never ever run away with the idea that person can actually see, as in the way that you see. They can't. It's a residual vision that can sometimes leave some light and dark, or you can feel light and dark, or indeed you may have a small peripheral vision that would allow you some colour. Well, sadly, this wasn't going to happen to me, and then I'll tell you what happened next. We just moved home, and we had a flight of 5 steps outside of our front door. And having just been registered blind, I thought, well, I've got to do things that I would always do. There's no good sort of shying away from it. So with that, I sort of rushed downstairs to meet my husband to take our dog for a walk. And as I did so, I suddenly realised I hadn't put on my winter boots, and it was icy and snowy outside. And without realising it, as I kind of looked down, my balance went. And that's another thing, when you're blind, you have no balance. You have not that point on the horizon. So you find a lot of blind people move all the time. I try not to because it can be quite irritating. And I actually slipped down the 5 steps, and I ended up with sort of an elongated sedge. And my head went down first, and then my rear end, and my pollen coccyx was the size of a sponge, by a sponge. So it took me about 3 months to walk properly again, I have to say. But the downside of it was that I lost that residual vision. So now my life was one colour, and I use that word carefully in inverted commas, because there are very, very few blind people who see black. The only people who see black are those who have no understanding or have detached retinas when they're born and they've not been able to be reconnected. There's all sorts of reasons, but there are very, very few people that see black, and I'll tell you what I see. This is something you can do. It sounds like homework, but if you go home, I know it'll be dark then, what you need to do is to stand somewhere where you've got bright light, but by a night switch. Stare at the bright light, then turn the light switch off, and then close your eyes, I should say, and then the other way round. So I always get this round the wrong way. Stare at the bright light, switch the switch off, and then close your eyes, and that is what I see. So it'll give you a good insight into what I see. The journey into art was a very strange one, because when I was at school, I couldn't do art at all. It was one of those things, I'd look at a piece of paper and I'd actually panic. And we had a wonderful new art master, and I knew that I'd be terribly disappointed in him. And I mention it because he's relevant to the end of this tale. And I remember doing this sort of, I don't know what to do, sir. And he said, I don't care what you do, Fennymore, just do something, anything. So I did, and finished it. And it was a church with a big old tree and a little path. And for me it was wonderful, but it wasn't good at all. You couldn't even put it under the heading of naive, really. So I finished it, and I was just about to tidy up, and my elbow caught the jam jar that I had my brushes in the water, and it fell literally all over it, ponded. So being quick thinking, I picked up the rags and patted it all down, and I'm thinking to myself, what can I tell him what I've done, because will I get told off or whatever. So I just carried on and patting it down, and then I did a few extra bits on it, and I stood waiting for sentence. And Mr. Knott came beside me, stood beside me, and he said, "Now, Fennymore," he said, "talk me through this." And I thought, "Oh, blimey, here we go." And I was just about to do sort of the grovelling apology, and I have a little gremlin, you can't see him, he sits on my shoulder, and he gets me out of very tight corners. And so I said, "Well, actually, so it's a church with a huge overhanging tree with a shadowed path in a thunderstorm." "Right," he said, picked it up, took it up to the art head, they dried it, mounted it, framed it, and they put it in the foyer of the school for the whole summer term. And I own up now and say I was so ashamed. What I did, I always went to the back door rather than the front school door. Otherwise I'd have to go in like this, you know. "All right, Mary, back to your company." And after that, me and Art was not the thing. If she wanted us to tell me. Okay. All right, I'll get that down. Thank you. And I'm going to wonder, because you will all end up like snowdrifts, I promise. So the art started there. Now, Mr. Knott focuses in this because he lived into his 90s, and I had a wonderful opportunity to contact him and tell him what I'm doing now, and the art and the website and the exhibitions and everything that I've been doing. And his final words to me were, "Now, Fennymore," he said, "I knew you had it in you." And the art didn't figure heavily. I went on to write my first novel. The one thing about losing my sight, I really, really didn't see it as an end of anything. I saw it really as the beginning of a new life. I saw it as something that would be very challenging and at times very scary, but it didn't faze me at all. And I just went on from one thing to another. And I have to tell you, at this time, I do believe the art came to me as a sort of therapy, because my husband I was just lost my sight. My husband was having a nervous breakdown. My daughter had just lost her first baby. My son had just been stabbed in a school incident, a football match actually. And my mother had just died, and my sister had gone to Australia. So with all those things to deal with, it was a very bleak time. So I'd like to think that the art actually came to me as a form of therapy. And what I did 4 paintings of a little girl having fun by the sea, a typically British seaside picture. And you will be able to see these on the website. And I brought some of my art with me, so you can see how it's developed. I then went on to finish the novel, which was published. And by this time, doing any kind of paintings, as I say, I did these 4 as a tribute to my granddaughter, these huge magnifying sheets, and also magnifying glasses. But it was awful, really, to do, because it was so painful on every level, as you can imagine. But those 4 paintings I have still, and they're on the website. We then subsequently, I'll try that again, honestly it's only tonic water. We then subsequently moved over to St Osyth in North East Essex. Some of you may well know it. And I joined the Essex site, and they were having an art group specifically for visually impaired people. And I said to the tutor, "Look, I really don't think I'll be able to do this, because I can't get back to the canvas. If you've got a pot of paint and a brush and you do that and get onto the canvas and now you want to go on, one, you don't know where you are, you can't feel it." So she said to me, "Well," she said, "have a think about it and see what you can come up with." In the interim, before the next group meeting, my husband and I were standing in B&Q's, and he said to me, "Look," he said, "this is putty." He said, "It's quick dry," and he said, "You can perhaps roll it into skeins or just like shoelaces." So I said, "Well, I'll give it a go." And that is exactly what I did. And as I say, I brought some artwork with me so you can see how it began and what I do now. But I found that so restricting. So I found a way to use all raised art mediums. Now this can be anything from, as I say, the DIY putty. It can be what they call an art mache, or indeed a gel that may have beads, glass beads, or something to give you a tactile feel. And then I thought, well, that's fine. How am I going to get this on the canvas? So I decided the best way to do it would be to map the image in my mind out onto the canvas. And I did that by using blue tack. So, excuse me, with blue tack, all I do is pinch a piece off, put it onto the shape. So we do a clip. So I pinch a piece off and do the outline of the clip, and perhaps the other side. And then I fill it all in with the high mediums of gel, whichever one I had. And then to paint it, I then would use my fingers. But I would actually use that high medium stuff to actually sculpt on the gel, and then use my fingers. But this is my palette, the back of my hand. I put 3 enormous pieces of paint on there, big dollops, really, I should say. And so for the viewer, because I can't actually mix paints, what I do is that I use smoke and mirrors, because when the viewer looks at the painting, the colours that I've used, not exactly blended or mixed, but actually put on one after the other and built up, will actually give me the colour I want you to see. If you see blue and green, you're going to say turquoise, so that's what your brain will tell you. And so that's pretty much how I do it. But moving on to the level, for want of a better word, than I am now, I had to work very, very hard. But more importantly, before I did anything, I had to find a way of understanding colours. And this is where I introduce you to Roger on my left. May I have my pen, please, Roger? Thank you very much. And we are there. No, that's the colouring case, thank you. And that one, thank you. And we can give you that one back. Now, this little gizmo is called a pen friend. May I have the tube of paint, please? Thank you. How much tube can I have? Right, here we go. Now, I put on my chain of office. And this is a pen friend. Now what it does, it's actually a labeler. And on here, we should have, yes we do, we have a label. And when you buy these, they actually come with a group of labels, and each label has a barcode. So what we do, we switch it on. I did this on radio and nothing worked, you can imagine what you know. I ad-libbed, so no, I don't think that was too bad. And what we do, I don't really know what colour this is, I haven't got a clue, but I'll have some fun with it. We just put this down and we go on there. Alright, just a minute. Try again. I knew this would happen. Oh. We consult Roger. That is the label, isn't it? It's on there, thank you. I've been doing it, just think I've been doing it for 5 minutes. Here we go. Do you know the rascal's not going to do it? Hang on. Right, I was going to say something else then, but I thought, no, don't give it that. That's that one. And that's that one. Okay, sorry. Sure, it's not going to do it. I feel quite more like, yeah, hang on. Just turn you on. That's off, actually. Put you on there. Ooh, how very strange. Talk amongst yourselves.
The other tube work. It's another tube.
I think you might be right. Is there another tube there, Roger? It doesn't, okay. Well, that is the label, isn't it? It's the actual one. How very strange. Okay. I don't know if it will do it now. It's not going to. Oh, I do apologise. But the principle of it, I won't waste time. This is awful, actually. I was so thrilled because it's new. That's probably why, isn't it? That is strange. change. Okay. All right. My apologies. The thinking behind it is that you put the label on there, and we'll say this is blue. You then take this, and the barcode reader is at the bottom. You put it on the top, and you press the second button down, and it will actually read the barcode. I would say sky blue, pink, with yellow dots on, or something equally simple, and then put it on back, and it will tell me that this is the sky blue, pink, with yellow dots on. And I do apologise for it not working. I really can't think why. I know it doesn't mean that. I'm sorry. Okay, but it has got a label on it, is it? No, it doesn't, does it? Okay, well I do apologise, but this is the way that I get my colours. And so all those tubes have got the label on it, and I just put them in my big tub. So I just take a handful out, put this on it, and actually read the colour of the paint that's inside. So I do apologise, but what I do have, can I have capital? This is a real lovely gizmo. To most people it looks like a binocular of some kind. In actual fact, if I take the top off, please work. It's what they call a colour indicator, and to use it, what we do, we use the slide and we do that, and it will say white. Okay. Now, this is wonderful for me because it means I can take part in all do it yourself and all the rest of it, and close, of course. So if we recalibrate it, take it back, white, thank you, and then we do dark red. White. So this will give me the colour of anything I put on it, or put to it, I should say. And this is a wonderful gizmo, which I really wouldn't be without. But moving on with the, thank you, Roger. Moving on with the art, I then went back and I finished a portrait of my guide dog Amber. And I've used the DIY putty. And if I ask Roger, if you want to dive down the painting and give me along the bamba, and oh, lovely. Thank you. Oh, yes, thank you. Oh, which way round? Oh, right, that way round. That's it. Oh, ow. Okay. Now, this is the picture of my guide dog Amber. It's a portrait of her, and I tried to get her with her very mischievous look. Oh, sorry about that. A very mischievous giggle. I'm sure she used to giggle. And this actually is an award winner. And it was done so simply. I think that was the secret of it. And that was an award winner, and that went up to Scotland for 6 weeks. It's a very simple one. But as I say, I found using this particular medium rather restricting. But the way, if I show you the very first one I did, which is the little house, you'll see just how much I achieved from that one. This is the very, very first one I did, and I think you would agree that I'd learned something from that to this. Remember, I've not had a single art lesson in my life, and on this one I'm sure it shows. But this actually was a photograph sent from my sister that my husband described to me, and it's my sister's home in Australia. And I actually took it over with me when I went in 2012. My sister's very critical, severe. With an award under my belt for that one, I thought that was pretty good. Now, if we move on to, I've forgotten the next one, which is, of course, the abstract. Yeah, that's the long one. I've done about 130 paintings altogether, and I do sort of haul them around. But this one, where are we? Oops, did I? Oh, got it, thank you. Now, this one's very different to the things I would do. Right way around, yeah. The thinking behind this is a very different material. This is what they call art. I beg your pardon, you can't see, can you? There you are. It is art mache, and it really is quite simply the paper and PVA and water. And I literally did it freehand. And how this painting came about was I listened to one of the few white sound emergency vehicles, and it's more of a whoosh. And if you read this from right to left to right, that's the sound coming towards us. That's the sound coming towards you, and the little hole here is the expulsion, and then the sound trailing away. And that one was my first venture in anything remotely abstract, although I am asked what is it I do, and I say, well, it's a cross between abstract and impressionism. And I must say that the work I have done has been wonderfully received by professional artists. And I think it's the last one, isn't it, Roger? Yes, please. I can give them back to you in one go. And we are there. Okay, thank you, Roger. Now, these are called Crazy Daisies. And again, I've used 3 or 4 different mediums on here. I've used the art mache, I've used the black lava jar, which is the pieces over the centre. The material, actually, if you believe it or not, is grouting fixative. So that gives you a rough idea of just what we can use when we create art. This one's a very popular one, and this is one of the most recent. So if you look at the very first one I did, of course, my sister's house, from photograph to that, I might be deliberately, I seem to have and get, thank you, I seem to get movement, particularly in water. I haven't brought any of the others with me because it's a hell of a lot to haul around. Here we are, and I thank you. So that gives you a rough idea of what I do. As I say, I also write. And the first novel came out in 2002, and the second one will be out in January. We had to also, I'm trying to think of the date, but I won't bore you with that. But with everything that has been going on, I think what I'm trying, and I've given motivation and inspirational talks is part of my life as well. I work with children with disabilities, and I also work with adults with learning difficulties. And as I say, whatever you want to do it because you want to, and do it with love because it will show. And my love for what I do is actually my passion. What I will finish with is this. In 2012, I went over to visit my sister in Australia. And when I left, and actually the meet and greet guy took me over to the passport control and all the rest of it. He was asking me how much I'd enjoyed my stay, would I come back on his own? And I said, just had a wonderful time. And he said, so he said, how long have you been here? So I said, I've been here a month. And he said, you come back? I said, oh, absolutely. And he said, well, how long is it since you've seen your sister? So I said, well, I haven't seen her for 42 years. With that, he stopped in his tracks, stood in front of me, and he said, that's a bloody long time between drinks. And with that in mind, I'm sure you do need refreshment, and I thank you for listening.
I'll take a couple of questions if anybody.
Of course.
Yes.
Yes, thank you very much for that presentation, very interesting. I'm a watercolour artist, clearly mine isn't a tactile medium. Do you allow others to feel your painting so they can experience your artwork?
Yes, I do, because that's really why I do it, to allow people to feel. A very short story was that over at the embroidery gallery, they invited a group of children with severe autism. And one of the young lads there hadn't shown any emotion at all. And when the curator actually took his hand and ran it across one of my paintings, she said, I felt him quiver. And that young lad brought his parents to the gallery every night so we could touch my paintings. It is about touch, it's about feeling. And I will say this, very experienced and professional artists have told me that they can see my passion in my work, because it's colours that people wouldn't put together. It's styles, thank you. It's styles that people do find difficult. And I have some funny things, but the one with Amber was on a table at a meeting that I was about to address. And this lady picked it up and shoved it under my nose. She said, "Who done this? Some kind of kid?" And I said, "Yes, me." So it can be very much criticised as it can be, you know, they're telling me it's an art and all that kind of stuff. And I said, "But it's an art, what is?" So in answer to your question, yes, I encourage it. And the other person who really gave me a fillip one evening when I was feeling a bit jaded was a professional artist, and she's famous. I'm going to not name her. She approached me after I'd given a speech, and she said to me, "I very nearly didn't come." She said, "But I'm ever so glad I did." So I said, "Well, I'm very pleased that you're here." And she said, "I've been feeling a bit jaded about my work." She said, "I've got in a rut." She said, "I'll tell you what I'm going to do, Annie." She said, "When I get back," she said, "I am going to try your method." She said, "It's worked." And also the beaders and the embroiderers at the gallery have taken a piece of my work. I think it's the Cloud on Black Comb. And they're actually working it, the beading and the embroidery, into the black comb. So that's, I think, is a lovely, lovely thing. Absolutely thrilled with that.
Right. Can I call Jeff?
I'm not sure if it is in order to ask you what that psychotropic antidepressant that you have. Just for my own interview because I'm a doctor.
Well, it's not used now, but it was called oxazepam.
Oxazepam.
Yeah. And that one, it really alters the mind as well. But what I haven't told you is that I had that not only because of the anxiety left from the first marriage, but actually I had agoraphobia for 22 years. So when I landed in Sydney, I thought, yep, I think we're over it. And I went on my own, I forgot to tell you that. Yeah, I went on my own.
Thank you very much, Jeff.
Well, I admire people that caring for children and people with learning disabilities and old age pensioners and Rotarians. I think you're an inspiration not only for those who are blind but those who are sighted, and your inspiration actually is fantastic. So thank you very much indeed. I'd like to thank Colin for arranging you to come and talk to us, because I think he must have been inspired to get you on our books. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you, fellows. Is there any other business?
Thank you.
No. Next meeting's menu is on the website. Please contact Jeff.
Next meeting is at Mandarin House.
So there's no need.
Don't contact me.
You can rest, Jeff.
Contact Norman.
Well, there's no choice. Is it? It's 6:30 for 7. That's right. 6:30 for 7.
That is correct.
Thank you. I remind you of the apologies book, menu and the website. Finance stores, please be upstanding.